Hello, everybody, and welcome to the E2KG Deep Dive. This is episode 7. I have to pronunciate as I say that, but this is our deep dive into news of the week. This is for the week of August 13th through August 17th, episode 7. We are live here on Monday, August 20th, which means that there are some announcements coming up even as we get ready for this show. We've got Gamescom going on right now over in Germany, so we've had some announcements kind of trickle out today, but we're going to save some of those for next week as we kind of figure out what that actually means. Obviously, NVIDIA dropped a big piece and a big price tag with their graphics card today, but we also got a couple other informational pieces and some teases. We know about the From Software game for Xbox from Activision, which is coming out in 2019. We know about an open beta for Battlefield 5 coming out at the beginning of September. We get some teases about things like Shenmue 3, if that's actually a tease or if it's just a tease to tell us that it's happening or it may not be happening. And another Kickstarter game with Bloodstain, right from Ikaragi. Yeah, whatever. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry for slaughtering the name of Symphony of the Night and multiple other Castlevania games, but his Bloodstained game is coming out, is being delayed until 2019. But what is not being delayed is a gentleman who are here with me tonight. So joining me is SwissGuard. How are you, Mr. Swiss?
I'm doing well. Just a little inside baseball. We did like you pitched talking about NVIDIA, and Agasicles said, no, we got to wait till next week. But I think he just wants to be on the show to talk about it.
I think so. Well, I think the other piece is it's hard to say until people actually get a demo in front of them, right? I mean, they can talk about specs all they want, but until what it actually means. But Agasicles, I'm sure, will be here to give us some hype about it, but also some concerns. Because while the man may buy every piece of tech that is announced and released, he's also relatively critical about many things as well. But a man who loves to play games of all varieties is also joining us here and is usually pretty cheery and not so critical, and that is Mr. Osiris Prime. How are you, sir?
I am very discombobulated tonight.
Discombobulated?
Almost as much as you, so.
Well, if you try to pronounce multiple names of Japanese creators,
that's right.
Then you could do that. But anyhow, we've got some good stories. We've got some good news tonight, and we are going to move through these as we always do in a relatively quick fashion, but also take some time once we get into the news to slow down a little bit and to dive deep into the topic. So there's a couple of news stories here this week. We got some games releasing. A lot of things have been announced. There's not a whole lot of big surprises, and most surprises are being saved right now for Gamescom, so we'll see. But last week we had a couple news stories, and actually, so Swiss, you just talked about some inside baseball, so I'm gonna get real here for a moment, gentlemen. But some inside baseball of me is in my daily life, I play the role of a librarian and a teacher. And so a lot of what I've talked about with my students over the last, I would say 15 years has been about evaluating information, has been about doing research, using that research to formulate your own ideas, your own hypotheses, taking that research, combining it with your own thoughts, and to be able to put that back in a form that expresses your own information and not one that just simply rearranges the words that you read in a book or online or someplace else and call it your own. And so that's my segue into the IGN news story about a former Nintendo editor at IGN who had been with the company for less than a year. He joined back in the fall of 2017, who had been let go after at first some accusation of plagiarism made by another YouTuber around the game Dead Cells. But since then, there have been a number of other instances about his work, not only at IGN, but also on his YouTube channel prior to joining IGN that have come up for plagiarism. So, and I want to talk about this just a little bit, and I think the big hook for me, the reason to bring it up is not just because I spend a lot of time working with students to help them, to not do this, right? But I even had conversations with my son, who's in high school, about this as well, and he looked at the examples and made the same conclusion of, well, just because you change a word, my teacher would still call it plagiarism. Yeah, I think that idea there is what's come up. And I think the piece that I want to talk about is in his video that was he made, apologizing to IGN, but not necessarily apologizing for his work and the plagiarism, because what he ended up saying was that it's common practice for reviewers. That what he said was, this isn't really different, and this is a quote here from him. It isn't really different from other reviewers. I try to look at all the resources that I have available to me before I start formulating my own critical opinions, so that I can offer the most cohesive possible review. So the reason that stuck out to me, guys, is the whole point of a review is kind of your own editorial voice, right? It's what we do on our game experience show, right? Is that when we assign you a game and you talk about what you played, you're not going back and compiling a bunch of different reviews to give us a summary of the game. You're talking about your experience. And so somewhere that was lost in translation or not understood as part of the editorial role. But I think he was also very unrepentant in that, and said that, hopefully it doesn't, paint other reviewers on well-established sites, or even people trying to break into the industry, in a same light. So that's my initial piece here, guys. But I know you've both been following the story a little bit. Do you have other thoughts? As gamers, as people that have been following gaming journalism for years, this is the first time in a long time that we've kind of run into a plagiarism issue like this.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons I kind of threw this out there too, because I know we had the big, I can't remember the guy's name, but a few years ago there was a guy who supposedly he was, I don't know if he's like got something because of doing a review for a certain company or whatnot, but it was the first time that there's ever been like actually plagiarism, and it's pretty. I mean, from all the evidence I've seen, I mean it's pretty blatant. I mean. Kind of, I don't know if they went a little too far on this, but even on the article here, they give his resume as like a direct copy of a job template, basically website. And when I first saw that, I was like, oh, well, I mean, okay, I could see him using the template, but he actually like word for word used, all the words in that template, not just the structure itself. So it was just really weird. And I think, I guess Cleese brought this up when we were kind of talking about it in Flack, and is this, and you kind of mentioned it yourself, is this kind of paint a negative light on like YouTubers? Because this is basically what he was, as far as I can tell. He was just kind of a YouTube guy. I don't think he ever worked for any websites, or any at least big websites that I could tell from the various articles I had.
Yeah, no, not that I know of. I mean, I followed him when he joined IGN because I listened to Nintendo Voice Chat, and he talked about basically his experience was a lot of Nintendo streaming prior to this.
Yeah, and I think he was a big Switch guy too, so I think that was one of the reasons they had brought him in. But I hope that it doesn't go that way. Obviously, I'm sure sites now are going to obviously do thorough checks on people, but I don't know if it's. I guess it's kind of hard because if you're a YouTube, especially like with him, if he's a YouTuber, I mean, you'd have to go through like countless hours of video and stuff like that. I don't know if that's even feasible to try to do that, but maybe they'll think twice if like, oh, he's only been a YouTuber, so we're not gonna, or her, so we're not gonna hire this person on anymore because of this. But hopefully they can think of ways to check this a little bit better in the future, and not just IGN, for other sites too. So I don't know, Swiss, what are your thoughts?
My initial thoughts were basically along the lines of DB, which is, it's drilled into your head from an early age. You don't just lift and modify a word or two without attribution. And especially for people in the industry, I would have thought that that's kind of doubly so. I'm not a journalist, and I don't have a journalist like job or anything like that. So, and I was aware of, I'm aware of the rules, but for me personally, it was more like, I'm just thinking, I don't read reviews precisely because I don't want them to color my impressions of a game when I experience it. So whether or not that game I intend to talk about on E2KG, or it's just, me personally, or even a movie, like I don't want that experience soiled, really. It's kind of like, if somebody comes up to you and says, don't think about Mario, something's going to pop in your head real quick about Mario. You're going to have that. It's kind of like a quantum problem, like once it's been observed, it's changed. So I can't, I want my opinions to be my opinions. Now, after I experience something, after I play a game, I like talking about it with you guys. I like hearing about it. I might go and read reviews and see if people matched up with my impressions, and then I can, reevaluate. Oh, I didn't think about it like this, or whatever. But that I expect a reviewer to pretty much be in media blackout with regards to stuff like this. So that was another surprising thing, and that he did mention that as it's a common practice. I don't know how much these reviewers kind of interact with each other prior to, you can tell when the NDA gets lifted because all the sites at once have reviews up. But
so I mean, I can shed a little bit of light on that after listening to a series of different podcasts over the last week related to this, looking at things like Giant Bomb, where Gersman and others have been in the industry since the early 2000s, even in the late 90s, at multiple different sites, Game Informer and GameSpot, that they talked about how the common practice in the industry is you are more or less sequestered, right? That you're not comparing notes, you're not talking about it, that there may be that there may be an occasional time when you're like, you just discovered a secret, right, that Brad was talking about, finding something in the witness and wanting to share it with somebody. But the common practice when you assign a review is that you're not comparing notes along the way, because even if it's unintentional, that you may end up, that may, just like you said, Swiss, it may end up kind of warping your own perspective, or even if it reinforces your perspective, you may end up using a similar phrase that another journalist did, and then you open yourself up to this type of situation. And so that's where, some of their criticism was that this is not common practice, nor should it be at all, right? And so I think that is a key piece here.
Yeah, it's just a little weird that he would even said that. And his initial response, I don't know if he's responded since the more evidence has come out. He just kind of seemed kind of arrogant. He was actually taunting, or I don't say taunting, but calling out, I think, Kotaku, trying to have them find more evidence, and obviously it has. So I don't know, like where his head was. I don't know if it almost seems like this was obviously, it was intentional. So I don't know. It's just kind of weird, and just kind of a bummer, I guess, for everybody involved.
Yeah, I mean, right. He did call out Jason Schreier, and it's I deal with this at schools a lot, that difference between unintentional plagiarism and an intentional plagiarism. And, it is possible that some of this was unintentional, that he thought that this was practice. But along the way, to get into the industry, this is also something that should have been made part of his training, as you said, Swiss, right? It's ingrained into you in most, K-12 schools, let alone any type of post high school, that this is part of what how you interpret other people's information. So, gentlemen, one of the things I do want to interpret, though, is not this, but I want to talk about some other news stories that came up this week and interpret some announcements and some sales data, because it is E2KG Network, so we gotta talk about that. But really, we've got a couple of different news stories here that these are games that just won't die, right? That there are games that keep coming back and continuing to sell record numbers of amounts. We get some new information about GTA 5 that it was July 2018's top seller on the PSN in the US, right? There are continually stories about GTA 5 still being on NPDs. We're up over 90 million copies sold. We also have another news story here about another old game, another 7-year-old game or so that just got announced for the Switch. And so, Prime, you have that one, right?
Yeah. So I think you're talking about the Blizzard game announcement. Yeah. So Diablo 3 is coming to the Nintendo Switch. So this is going to be titled Diablo 3 Eternal Collection. It'll have obviously the original game and Reaper of Souls expansion, and then adventure mode, which I'm not sure what that actually is. How is that like a different than like the regular story mode? Do you know?
Adventure mode, if I remember right, is more of like little vignettes. Not the full-on campaign, but you go into you have certain goals within certain levels that you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
And that they also do that for seasons then as well, where you can rank up in a season, get certain gear, things like that.
Okay. And then also it will have the rise of the Necromancer pack, which consists of the Necromancer class, and then also the Crusader class. Sorry, from fully unlocked from I guess the expansion from beforehand. So
yeah, so basically both of all the expansions that have come out for the PC version.
Yeah, and it just says fall 2018, so no exact date, but it will be $60, so full priced. So yes. So yeah, I'm kind of excited because I've always wanted to play this game. Not my typical genre, I guess, of game that I play. I used to play. Well, the only other game I can think of that kind of like this was the old Marvel. I can't remember what they're called right now. Those Marvel games, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I believe.
Yep, Ultimate Alliance. Yep.
Yeah, so I had a bit of a taste of that kind of gameplay with those two because there's two of them. But I always wanted to play this one just because I heard, it's an awesome game and all that. The previous ones were also good. And I always look for it, to go on like a really deep sale on Xbox One, but it never really does. So I think it's always at least like $30 or so, which is, it's fine, but I couldn't pull the trigger. I don't know. It's just something ingrained in me about that number, I guess. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one, so I'll probably pick it up when it comes out. And then also on the GTA, unfortunately I didn't get to read that article, but was that just digital or was that for all like digital and brick and mortar sales?
So the story that we pulled was that it was the PSN store. So
okay.
So digital there, but digital. I think we could pull a story from any NPD number over the last 5 or 6 years, and we'd see GTA still up in the top 10. So, okay. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I think that the difference here is that it's only on PlayStation that this store was about. But again, to be the number one, part of it is maybe it was July and kind of a slow month. But even as a slow month, that what ends up happening, is that this game from last console generation is the highest seller. So I guess this is part of the deep dive for tonight, gentlemen, is what's the secret sauce here? What causes a game like Diablo or GTA 5? World of Warcraft just had their most recent expansion, and we're talking 14 years worth of gameplay there. What keeps a game like that relevant? What keeps it selling, and what keeps gamers playing?
I think that the Diablo 3 is kind of as far as like a long-legged game, it's kind of a cheat because we're going on the Switch now, so it's a new console, so it's a new opportunity to reach a new market. Now, because with the difference between Diablo 3 and GTA 5, Diablo 3 hasn't been burning up the sales charts for the last couple of years. You know what I mean? It had its moment in the sun, and it's still well thought of and well played, but it's not a GTA 5. So, what makes it appealing for this is the fact that it's just a very solid title. And if Activision Blizzard's looking at their their IPs in their lineup and says, what can we throw on the Switch? And shouldn't, I don't want to say throw on the Switch, because there's some nice things that they're doing. They're putting all, like you said, they're putting all the DLC and the expansions in. They're using the Switch Online Cloud Save feature, so you can literally play it on. Doesn't have to be your Switch. You can go on somebody else's Switch and you automatically have access to your files. So they're putting a little TLC into it, but it's a strong title that they can put on the Switch and be, get a return on their investment. GTA 5 is the one that perplexes me. Like, I completely understand Diablo 3 being able to have life on a new console, fresh set of consoles, and it's even a console that's different. It's not going from like the PS4 to the PS5 to the PS6. It's going to the Switch, which is a new thing. With GTA 5, you have just basically an unending stream of top 10 finishes with the occasional peak at the top of whatever console for a month. And I just don't know who's not playing GTA 5 that is finally jumping in. Like, that's what I don't understand. You'd have thought after 5 years that the people that were interested in the game would have bought it by now. So, I don't own it because it's not my thing, but I made that decision a long time ago, so I don't know why it's still percolating up.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, I know they're always dropping DLC in the game, and I think free as far as I know, most of it's been free, and that's obviously going to keep the people that are already playing on there. But yeah, it's a little weird that, I mean, it's always, even on Xbox too, it's always in the top 5, top 10. It's just I'm pretty, I don't know, DB, do you have any thoughts on why it keeps going?
No,
going?
I mean, so I'm looking at this article from Business Insider, right? So talking about moving out of games press and into business economics press, right? That here is an article from August 7th about GTA 5, about how it, last month it was third in NPDs, how it's almost breaking 100 million, and that it's made in the neighborhood of $6 billion. So, and you're right, it has, right? They just put out what was the equivalent of GTA Online's Ballad of Gay Tony, where you have nightclub stuff and actually Gay Tony comes back, right? So they've done a lot of this, but I think Swiss's point is absolutely true. Is who are all these new people? I mean, are these, multiple, even if they are multiple buyers that have purchased it on different systems, there is still this ever-growing audience of GTA members. And I think what would be really interesting would be to see the metrics of people that have purchased the game in even the last 3 years. How many of them have invested time into the campaign, or how many of them have bought it simply for the online mode, right? I mean, I think that in some ways the online mode has a life of its own. And with last week's kind of trailer reveal, or 2 weeks ago trailer reveal of Red Dead Redemption 2, I'm really curious to see if that has the same type of never-ending sales as something like GTA 5.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Red Dead Redemption 2 will not be in the top 10 for the next half decade. And that's not me saying that because I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is going to flop or anything like that. I think that GTA, Grand Theft Auto, going back to Grand Theft Auto 3, it has pierced the Muggles' consciousness as a game franchise. So, it's not a good term to use, but I would say the casual gamers, like the guy that will get a system and maybe have 1 or 2 games before he decides to sell it on Craigslist or trade it in at GameStop again, that's going to be one of the games that guy or girl picks up. And that's going to be the games that, like with GTA Online, that's going to be something that you and your buddies are going to play. So I think it's one of the very few handful of franchises that will get picked up by people that aren't quote unquote normal gamers. And that goes to your point, DB, is, what is the playtime specs for these people that pick it up? And I would venture to guess you have a very massive chasm between the people that play nothing but GTA 5 and have put thousands of hours into it, and then there's a bunch of people that have played it for the 10, 15, 20 hours and then move on. And it's those casual gamers that are propping it up because GTA is such a big brand. Red Dead Redemption 2, I am sure, they're putting some, I know they're putting some items from our Red Dead into GTA online now, to try to get that cross, property promotion. But I just don't see Red Dead being a brand that's going to pierce the consciousness like Grand Theft Auto has since, when did GTA 3 come out? Like 2005, 2003, somewhere in that neighborhood.
2003, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah.
But I'll fact check as Prime you weigh in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so we're in what, year 4, 5 of this generation? 5. So the only thing I can think of, four or 5.
No, yeah, 2003, right? I mean 2013, right?
13,
So
right?
year 5.
So year 5. So I mean, the only thing I can think of, and I mean, I know this is year 5, but people are, there's still people that are coming over from the Xbox 360 and PS3 era. I know I knew a lot of people that were holding out and have still held out. Maybe just finally picked it up last year, a year and a half ago. So maybe they're finally catching up, to the games, and maybe this was one that they played, back on the old system, and they're like, oh, what the heck now, I'll buy it, I'll pick it up again. So I mean, that's maybe one of the reasons, that it does keep going.
So I think the other, I mean, I'm thinking back of sales numbers, and not just, this is the thing that I have a disconnect with, is that the sales numbers are so huge, but when like Agassicles and I dive deep into financial reports, 2K is making their money on microtransactions. They're making their money on the the GTA bucks that are sold in GTA Online, and that's where, right, the shark. Yep, right. So that's the thing. Like it's winning on both fronts, right? It's not only making a lot in microtransactions, but it continues, as you said, Prime. It continues to sell really well, and I think you have a point there, right? Because this is a cross-generational game. This is a game that came out on the last consoles. It ran okay, but people knew that the new consoles were coming, and we're excited to have it on that. And as they convert over, you can pick it up for $30, and as you said, that's your magical price, right? So maybe it is an easy sell there.
Yeah, and I guess on kind of the flip side of obviously it's a big hit, it's selling, but is there anything really out there that and this is July also too, but is there anything really out there that that people want right now? Or I mean,
sure, I think that's a good point, right?
And that's on every system, not just
because it makes the top 3 in MPD doesn't mean that it moved a lot of units, right? In the middle of the summer, without any big release, moving units doesn't necessarily account for a whole lot. So
yeah, that was my next question. It didn't say like how many units were sold, did it? It just kind of said it was the top whatever.
No, I mean, I think the bigger number that probably makes the difference is the fact that it's almost at 100 million units sold life cycle wise.
Right.
Did we see with No Man's Sky? Did they say how many units they sold? Didn't he tweet that out? I just asked because No Man's Sky was 3rd on the list for top PS4 sellers, and I might fact check that.
Which is weird because that's already on there. So
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder how that, if that counted for both Xbox ones and PC ones on NPD. Or no, you're just looking at the list of PSN data. So I don't know, yeah, what the No Man's Skies.
Yeah, Rocket League's number 2. We got FIFA 4, Destiny 2.5, Darksiders War Mastered Edition. 6, Minecraft 7, Minecraft's still up there. I mean, that kind of pops up. There's another one that's always, being thrown up there, in
Yep.
top 10 at least. Even on, I've noticed lately on the Switch, it kind of fell off for a long time, and then these past couple months, it's jumped back up to top 10, top 5.
Well, ever since E3, they did that update where you can play with Xbox, right? And so they did the kind of cohesive update, So I have a question related to this, guys, and thinking about as I've been looking and trying to watch news from Gamescom and talking with other friends about things like Battlefield 5 or the beta for Call of Duty. So GTA 5 survives for 5 years and continues to sell well on the strength of probably both, right? On the strength of its cultural name recognition that gets people in to play the traditional story campaign for what it's worth, but also a deep online mode that people are heavily invested in and that they see a lot of revenue in microtransactions. That's one model with 2K. And then you have EA and Activision going in the opposite, the annualized model of Call of Duty or Battlefield. And even Battlefield, Battlefield 1, that was 2 years ago. And so now everybody with their progress in Battlefield 1, rather than continuing to go through the war that they're moving everybody moves over to the next battlefield and you start your progress all back over, right? This was a complaint within Call of Duty for a number of years of prestiging up and then starting over with a new game and a new engine and sometimes even a new development team, right? That last year was one of the first years the last 2 years with Call of Duty. You saw Black Ops 3 have a life beyond the 1 year cycle. But, so we've seen how it can work with GTA and an online and microtransactions. Are there other publishers who have taken up that model, or is the allure of selling you a $60 box still too excitable?
I mean, we've seen them try to emulate the microtransaction model and marry it up with what should have been a cultural phenomenon, and that became a steaming dumpster fire. Well, that's not fair. That's not fair.
It became a big enough news that Disney had to take their hand, right? I mean so you're right? That what should have been a big cultural hit that has even more cultural relevance than GTA is Star Wars, and we saw what happened last year.
But so there's got to be more than just culturally relevant like IP plus microtransactions. You can't do that and expect to have your monetary printing press. So going to I think multiple strategies can work, but this is me being naive, so I don't know if it's true. But like you said, okay, so we have the one model where we have one game. They're obviously pumping out more online content for GTA 5. They have to create these, widgets and skins and whatnot for players to want to buy. So either way, your workers are still churning out content. What you need to do is, I would say, try to maximize your return of investment on developer time versus game content. So with these more annualized releases, I mean, people complain about it in Madden all the time, but they're not scrapping it all and working from the ground up every year. They're able to leverage what they've worked on in the past, whether that's art assets and they tweak it. Even with an Activision and Call of Duty, okay, so they have multiple dev teams. So I imagine that there is some cross-pollination of assets, but there's certainly cross-pollination of design. I mean, a Call of Duty title is a Call of Duty title. There's going to be a certain framework that you're working in, and they're not going to have to like evaluate the play testing and whatnot. So in any of these models, you have developers are continuously pumping out content, whether it's for a single game or not, and they're leveraging the work they've done in the past. So I can see how it would work. The positive is if you're an Activision, and this might just be my Neanderthal mind not looking at the future, but every year or two you get to throw a fresh coat of paint on it. It's like when the cookie company like redoes their packaging, right? It's still an Oreo inside, but oh look, it's got this fancy new logo, and people get excited again. With GTA 5, for whatever reason it hasn't. This is where my argument falls apart, but I can see things getting stale. And at least with your fresh titles coming in every month, there's a little bit of a mental newness to it to attract people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think there's probably some brand conditioning that goes on in that as well, right? That GTA, people know that GTA is not an annualized series, that this is not something that pumps out all the time. And I think we talk about Activision Blizzard, that you can look at, Diablo 3, right? That we know that Diablo is not an annualized series, or Overwatch. And so the fact that they keep putting in content or new adventures and new seasons, that there is a little bit of training that has happened with consumers, that they know that this is a game that's going to be around for a while and iterate, versus a 1 year or 2 year kind of fresh coat of paint cycle. And for those on the other side, for fans of Battlefield and Call of Duty, that they know that it's going to continue to give me a new experience every year, every 2 years, that's just the cycle that it is. So I think that's it's an interesting nut to crack, and I don't know that we have an answer, and that's okay, because this is Deep Dive, and we're here to kind of flesh out some of those issues, talk about some of that. But it makes me wonder, because everything we've been talking about at this point is kind of multiplayer focused, right? Even Diablo as a single player game, a lot of it is multiplayer. It's online. You can play in, cooperatively. So are there ways that this could be done for a single player story focused, right? Swiss, you just got done, or you just kind of gave us your report on Nier Automata. At some of the ways that they do that in terms of extending that gameplay is the multiple endings, right? That 2 weeks ago last week we had the news story about Square Enix announcing the different difficulty settings for the new Tomb Raider, right? And I'm stumbling through the name right now, right? Shadow of the Tomb Raider. There we go. Right, and so those difficulty settings, they have got 3 different sliders. That you've got one for combat, you've got one for traversal, and you've got one for puzzles. And you can make each of those individually more difficult or less difficult, so that combat is easy, but you've got none of your survival instincts work, and so you kind of got to figure out the landscape and not just get Batman detective vision hints as you go. Or you can make the combat really hard, but you hate puzzles, and so the critical path through a puzzle is highlighted in a different color than the other things. So maybe that's a way that single player games could vary up and provide that multiple playthrough experience. A game that you really love, Swiss, was Horizon Zero Dawn. It's a game that gave you a lot of time to invest in it, but do you have a reason to go back to it, to stick with it after you've kind of finished the story?
Not immediately. So I unlocked the New Game Plus mode, or whatever they called it, in Zero Dawn, and there's a part of me that was like, oh, if I go back in there, I can, grind away. But there's not an incentive there. I already experienced the story. I experienced the gameplay, and cranking up the difficulty didn't strike me as a meaningful use of my time. I want to get the DLC, which opens a new story place and some new quests and everything. I didn't want to do that immediately either, just because I wanted to play some different stuff. But I think that, yeah, it's really hard for single player games, because with the single player experience, I just feel like by and large a single player game is going to be much more narrative focused. So you or content, maybe narrative's too narrow a scope, content focused. With GTA 5 online, okay, and Call of Duty and all these examples that you had, the draw, yeah, they're producing fresh content, but it's not groundbreaking stuff. It's not, massive scope changes in the story or the world or whatever. You're being drawn in because, oh, I got some new things I can play with my friends. I got some new things I can use now with my friends. And if I'm thinking, if there wasn't a massive influx of players and the player base was small, having some fresh skins or a new coat of paint, so to speak, probably wouldn't be enough of a draw. With a single player game, we don't have that extra draw of my friends are playing this. So the game has to provide a different kind of experience. And at some point, the narrative experience, the game experience is an arc, right? You begin, you play, and then it has a closing. And I don't see how just tacking on a new difficulty level makes you want to traverse that arc again, when there's so much else out there to play. I mean, you may love the story, but how many times can you play through a game and have the story be a fresh experience?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So, um, I think that's so. So, Prime, you've got a game that you've been spending a lot of time with. We talked about it, right? No Man's Sky, that now has multiplayer aspects to it. But I think what you've been doing is mainly the single player pieces. But the fact that it's procedurally generated, does that give you more incentive to keep going or to re-roll a character? Is that some game that is it a game that you see yourself kind of coming back to with this long tail?
Yeah, it's definitely with the procedural generation. It keeps me going. Uh, I'm not really one to start multiple characters like Destiny. I only had one character. In Call of Duty, there's different loadouts you can do with the newer incarnations of the game. I was just stuck with one. I couldn't go back and do multiple things like that. Just playing through any single player game for the most part. I'll do it in normal, and I'm pretty much done with it once I beat the game, and that's just me. That's just me personally. I know I've seen a lot of people online say, "Oh, I like to go back and do I'll start on easy and just work my way up, or I'll start on normal and just do hard, at the least hard." And I could never do that. I could never just go back to a game for some reason. Not a single player game like that, but No Man's Sky, like you mentioned, there's you go to different you go to a world and it's totally different, from me than from somebody else, and I could just keep going basically indefinitely. And that's the same reason I like to play Minecraft because well, I take that back because I do sometimes do start new worlds in Minecraft, and that's mostly because of when updates happen, and that's more of the game because it kind of it doesn't totally rewrite everything, but if there's a certain section that you've already kind of played in, that doesn't no nothing happens to that part. So I have to venture out, from that part, which is a little easier now because I I believe on the Xbox now and even on the Switch, it's infinite worlds or more or less infinite worlds. So they've gotten better with that. So I haven't done it as often as I had before, but that definitely does keep me going. You know. And I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. So go ahead with your next, if anybody else has anything.
Well,
So
I'm glad you mentioned Minecraft because I think we need to make we've uncovered a distinguishing characteristic in single player games, and that is the sandbox title, wherein we have the player having a more profound influence on the what they put into the game is what they get out of the game. So you're limited more by your imagination, and less by the structure of the game designers and the narrative structure of the game designers. So with No Man's Sky, it's not Minecraft, but it still allows you to invent your own story to a certain extent, and the procedural generation allows you to kind of continuously uh, redefine your experience, so to speak. And Minecraft, you know, so I think the sandbox title allows the player to kind of marinate in a game without being bound to an arc, and that can definitely affect the longevity of a game.
Yeah, and there is a there is a story going on within No Man's Sky, and surprisingly, I'm actually following the story a little bit more than doing the side missions, which I usually do, like say in like Skyrim. What I usually do would just start maybe like 2 3 of the main quest modes, and then I would just branch off and just start exploring. For some reason in No Man's Sky, it's the opposite. I'm actually going through the main quests because they have it sectioned off with main quests and then side quests. I'm just doing the main quests, even though I have like I think I got like 3 different main quests right now that I can go through. But I'm going through those, and the one kind of quest line, it does seem to like unlock things for me. So I think that's more of the reason why I'm doing it, at least in No Man's Sky. But I don't know. It's just weird. I guess I guess it just depends on the game for me, at least. I'm not just, like I said, I'm not just one to keep going through a single player game. And I don't. That's another thing. I don't like to go like say like Assassin's Creed. I don't like to go and find every statue or pigeon or whatever whatever little trinket that they have that you got to collect. That's just not me. I'm not a completionist, as they say. I'm a completionist as far as the story goes. There's the main quest. That's what my definition is. Hey, did you complete a game? Like, yeah, I beat the story. Like, most people would be like, no, you didn't complete the game. That you're nowhere near it, completing. But for me, that's just the story. That's complete to me. Whatever difficulty you happen to be on. Which if you think about it, back in the day, if you did do something on easy and something even normal through the single player game, you didn't get like the real story ending, which kind of pissed me off. But that doesn't seem to be the point nowadays. They kind of they still do that every once in a while, but it's not as bad as it used to be.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? I think we can all remember games where you had to beat it at a certain level of difficulty to unlock everything or to get the true ending.
Have you guys ever played Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem for the GameCube? I think you had to beat that game 3 times to get the real ending. You had to. So anyway.
Well, I mean, this coming from the guy who's playing Nier Automata, where you have to beat that game. I think most things that I've read, you have to get to at least the 3rd or 4th ending to really get the true ending of it all. So even when you finish the game the first time, it turns you back in and encourages you to go back, right, to finish and see the rest of the story, play again. So yeah, there are ways that a game does that. But I'm going to wrap us up here with the sandbox piece that you brought up, Swiss, because I think that brings us right back to GTA, of that whether people are playing the online or they're playing the single player, but playing it just as a big sandbox, right? That how many people have spent tens of hours, or if not longer, in GTA, but never actually finished the story mode just because they drove around and found jumps or listened to the radio or found out how how high their threat level could get in any of the GTA since in the modern generations. So I think that aspect of being able to make your own game out of it is one of the things that gives it legs, right? If it's not the ability to play with other people, it's either the kind of continual pump of and drip of content, or the ability for gamers to kind of make their own fun and tell their own stories. And so, those are things that we've talked about here on E2KG multiple times before, is that idea of being able to tell your own story with something, or to be able to take what the designers gave you and make something more out of it. So, gentlemen, any final thoughts here on games with long tails, games with that keep us coming back or that stay relevant years and years after their initial releases?
Well, I just want to say, I'm going to go a little tangent here, that GTA is a series that I've actually never beat the story in. And I thought with this latest one, with 5, that I might do it because it's I think it's the shortest of the GTAs as far as the story mode. I believe I read somewhere, but I still, like you said, I could just, I'll start doing some missions and then like, oh hey, what's this over here? And, I'll just start doing some crazy stuff. Or that was kind of my go-to game back in the day when I just want to blow off steam. I just wreck stuff. Put in your little cheat codes in your phone. And spawn a bazooka, or back in, I think, what was it, San Andreas, you can do the rocket pack or the jet pack. So yeah, I mean, it's just, it's interesting how people will just kind of make, and even people will just make their own game like within like GTA, like some kind of weird like car exploding game. Like, hey, what's the farthest I can blow up a car or something like that. It's just interesting how people can just make up their own games, and in maybe not the way the developer wanted you to, but just people find a way. Swiss, any last thoughts?
You're making me reconsider my point about casual people keeping it alive, because like I really didn't think about the sandbox aspect of it as much, but I think that's much more probably why it has strength. I guess that doesn't explain why the sales are still high. It explains why people are still playing it.
Yeah. And they have a creator mode, I believe, too, in the online portion, I believe, now. So
I did not know that. So, but I think these are all really good points, right? The idea of what you can do and what fun you can make, and being able to be your own author of that content, right?
oh wait, I think I got it. PC. It's on the PC, because GTA and even 2K games, they usually don't go on PC. So PC players, they might
Sure,
make a
but
bulk of it.
Okay, so PC numbers don't make a whole lot of dent in NPD, because NPD only counts,
Oh, that's true.
or at least
console, right?
it counts mainly console, or it counts digital as well, but not necessarily digital through Steam and other places.
I forgot about that. That's right.
So anyhow, gentlemen, thank you for a good discussion tonight. And actually, so here's a little segue and a little more. We started the show with a little inside baseball. We're going to end it with some inside baseball as well. So tomorrow, every Tuesday, right, is our E2KG Gamer Experience show, our playlists, and again, gaming assignments. It's been a while since I've had an assignment, but I'm actually off tomorrow. So gentlemen, I won't be here. Swiss, I think you're getting a new assignment this week.
That's news to me, but
Okay.
It doesn't surprise me. We've been a filter here.
But I will say
Surprise.
that the next time my game assignment comes up, which will be next week, I think based on this discussion, I own GTA 5, and it may make its way into the list of choices for, and maybe I'll be thinking about what other games have had long-term tails that are still going on that might you guys might assign me as well. So we started off talking about being able to make your own editorial choices and have your own opinions, and we ended tonight with being able to make your own fun in those sandbox and with online play. Nice way to bookend our show, gentlemen. So again, thank you for the show tonight. Thank you for joining us. If you have comments, if you disagree with us, if you've got other games that you think have a good long tail that people should check out, things that have been going strong that maybe haven't got enough buzz, leave a comment in the show notes, and that would be excellent. And we'll continue to keep that discussion going with you and see what other kind of thoughts and games that we might be exposed to that we're not thinking about as well. So, as always, the E2KG Network is going to be coming at you with a number of shows. We've got some good announcements coming up as the weeks go on, with some additional shows and content, which is always exciting. But please join us back again tomorrow night for the Gamer Experience Show. For myself, DBQHams, Osiris Prime, and SwissGuard, I'd like to thank you all. And until next time, we'll continue to be enough to keep you going. Good night.